Commander Zura Thex pressed her clawed fingers against the viewport of the exploration vessel Shadow Strike, watching the small blue-green planet rotate slowly below. Her amber eyes, evolved for hunting in the eternal twilight of her homeworld, easily picked out the details that lesser species would miss. This world looked perfect for their needs. Initial scans show no advanced technology signatures, reported her second-in-command, Lieutenant Vex Cole. His voice carried the typical growl of their species, the Kythera. The dominant species appears to be in early industrial development. Primitive combustion engines, basic metallurgy. Nothing that could threaten us. Zara's lips pulled back slightly, revealing the sharp canines that mark her people as apex predators. The Kythera had conquered 17 worlds in the past century, each one falling quickly to their superior technology and hunting instincts. This planet, which the inhabitants apparently called Earth, would be no different. Excellent. Begin preparing the advanced scouts. We'll establish a forward base in one of their wilderness areas and observe their behavior patterns before the main invasion fleet arrives. The Shadow Strike was designed for exactly this kind of mission. At only 300 meters long, it was small enough to avoid detection by primitive sensors, while carrying a full complement of reconnaissance equipment and a crew of 50 elite Kythera warriors. Each crew member had been selected for their hunting skills and ability to remain undetected in hostile territory. 3 days later, the ship settled into a clearing deep within what human maps labeled as the Canadian Rockies. The location was perfect, isolated, heavily forested, and far from any human settlements. Zara led the first scouting party herself, eager to get her first close look at the species they would soon be hunting. The humans were exactly what the long-range surveys had suggested. Bipedal, soft-skinned, with blunt teeth, and forward-facing eyes that suggested they might have once been predators but had clearly lost that edge through domestication. Their average height put them slightly below most Kythera, and their muscle mass was laughably inferior. Most amusing of all, they seemed to have no natural weapons whatsoever. "Look at them," Vex whispered as they observed a human camping party from a concealed position. "They make fire by striking metal against stone. They carry all their food with them instead of hunting. They even bring artificial shelters instead of making them from their surroundings." Zara nodded, making notes on her scanner. "Completely domesticated. This will be easier than conquering the Velix, and they at least had natural armor plating." But it was on the 4th day of observation that things began to change in ways none of the Kythera could have predicted. Zara was leading a night reconnaissance patrol when her acute hearing picked up an unusual sound, a low whimpering that spoke of distress and fear. Her predatory instincts immediately sharpened, and she gestured for her team to spread out and investigate. They found the source in a small clearing. 3 human cubs, as the Kythera had begun calling human children. The younglings appeared to be lost, separated from their pack during what the humans called hiking. 2 appeared to be siblings, a male and female around the age when Kythera cubs would begin basic hunting training. The third was smaller, perhaps 6 years old in human terms. "Easy targets," Vex whispered, his hand moving toward his sidearm. "We could study their physiology and wait," Zara commanded, something making her hesitate. She had studied the intelligence reports extensively. Human cubs were supposedly even more helpless than the adults, requiring care and protection for an absurdly long period. Yet something about these 3 didn't match that assessment. The eldest of the 3, a boy who couldn't have been more than 12 years old, was moving with a purposeful efficiency that surprised her. He had built a small shelter from fallen branches and evergreen boughs with a skill that spoke of genuine wilderness knowledge. More interesting still, he was using materials to reflect heat from a small fire he had somehow managed to start without any of the metal and stone tools their previous observations had suggested humans required. "Sarah, come help me with this," the boy called softly to the female. "We need to make the shelter bigger for Emma." The girl responded immediately, working with her brother to expand the lean-to structure. Meanwhile, the smallest child, Emma, was gathering what appeared to be edible plants with a confidence that suggested significant knowledge about wilderness survival. How do they know what's safe to eat? Lieutenant Kex whispered. Our botanical surveys showed dozens of toxic plants in this area. Zara was wondering the same thing. She activated her scanner's translation matrix, which had been programmed with the dominant human language. My dad taught us about the three-leaf test, Emma was explaining to her companions. If it has 3 leaves and a shiny surface, don't touch it. That's poison ivy. And remember what Mom said about berries, Sarah added. If we're not 100% sure, we don't eat it. Better hungry than sick. The Kithera scouts exchanged glances. These human cubs were displaying knowledge and survival instincts that their intelligence reports had suggested the entire species lacked. Even more puzzling, they were working together with a coordination that seemed instinctive rather than trained. As the evening progressed, the Kithera found themselves becoming increasingly fascinated with the 3 humans. When the temperature dropped, the children didn't panic or huddle together helplessly as expected. Instead, they systematically gathered dry materials to maintain their fire, took turns keeping watch, and even set up what appeared to be early warning systems using arranged sticks that would make noise if disturbed by large animals. They're preparing defenses, Zara observed, more to herself than to her team. Against what? Her question was answered shortly before midnight, when Emma suddenly sat up straight in the shelter. Did you hear that? She whispered. The boy, whose name they had learned was David, immediately moved to the fire and began building it up. What kind of sound? Like breathing. Big breathing. Something big. Zara's own enhanced senses had detected the approaching presence several minutes earlier. A black bear, probably drawn by the scent of the food the children carried. For the Kithera, it was a minor threat at best. For 3 lost human cubs, it should have been a death sentence. But what happened next challenged everything the Kithera thought they understood about human behavior. David didn't panic. Instead, he calmly reached into his backpack and withdrew what appeared to be a small metal cylinder. Sarah, get behind the fire with Emma. Make noise if I say so. What is that? Vex whispered, focusing his scanner on the object. Some kind of chemical irritant delivery system, Zara replied, reading the translation. They call it bear spray. The bear emerged into the clearing, easily 3 times the mass of the largest human child. It reared up on its hind legs, displaying its full imposing height, and released a threatening roar that would have sent most prey animals fleeing in terror. David stood his ground. Get back, he shouted at the bear, making himself appear larger by raising his arms above his head. This is our camp. Get back. The bear dropped to all 4s and took several steps forward, testing this strange small creature that dared to challenge it. David held his position, thumb on the trigger of his spray canister. But what struck the watching Kithera wasn't his weapon. It was his complete lack of prey behavior. Despite being outweighed by a factor of 10 and possessing no natural weapons, the human cub was actively challenging a dangerous predator rather than fleeing or submitting. Alert the others if this goes bad, David called back to his sisters, his voice steady despite the obvious danger. But stay by the fire. Bears don't like fire. The standoff continued for nearly 5 minutes. The bear would advance a few steps, David would shout and make aggressive gestures, and the bear would pause, clearly confused by this prey animal that refused to behave like prey. Finally, the bear seemed to decide that these strange creatures were more trouble than they were worth. It turned and ambled back into the forest, leaving the 3 children alone with their fire. Nice work, David, Sarah said, her voice carrying relief, but not the hysteria the Kithera had expected. Think it'll come back? Maybe. We'll keep the fire going and take turns on watch. Emma, you sleep first. Sarah, and I will split the night. As the human cubs settled into their survival routine, the Kithera scouts retreated to process what they had witnessed. Commander, Vex said once they were back at their concealed position, I don't understand what we just observed. According to our intelligence, humans are domesticated, non-aggressive, and physically inferior. Yet those cubs just successfully defended themselves against a natural predator using strategy, tools, and aggressive posturing. Zara was reviewing the recordings of the encounter on her scanner, trying to reconcile what she had seen with everything she thought she knew about humans. Perhaps these are aberrant individuals, genetic throwbacks to their predatory ancestors. Should we continue observation? Zara considered this. The original mission plan called for 2 weeks of reconnaissance before reporting back to the invasion fleet. But these 3 humans had displayed behaviors that suggested their species